Welcome, everybody. My name is Gina Covarrubias. Thank you for joining us today. We have some really great information to bring to you. And I will give a little bit more of an intro about me once I start speaking. I'm going to turn it over to Angela. She's going to do her portion first, and I will let her introduce herself. And Angela, if you would like to share your screen so everyone can see your slides. And I'll put myself on mute and we can get going.
All right. Can you all just let Gina know there in the chat if you're able to see my screen, more so if you're not able to see my screen. Thank you for the introduction, Gina. My name is Angela Nichols, and I am a transition coach. My business is called Paranama Coaching, and I help people to navigate through changes in their life. So to tell you a little bit more about me and how I started doing this line of work, my professional background is in learning and development. Been an instructional designer for more than 25 years and have developed all kinds of different talent management and talent development solutions. And coaching became part of what I would teach a lot of leaders to do. And so in my professional life, I eventually decided to get certified as a coach myself because I was finding that as a leader, my effectiveness was directly related to how well I was able to coach. I married my coaching with my passion in my personal life, which is yoga, as you can see from my picture here on the screen. And I have been practicing yoga for about 20 years and teaching it for 10. And so when I went to become certified as a coach, I found a coaching program that was based in yoga philosophy called Yoga to Life. And I got this certification so that I could kind of marry my love of yoga and all of the great things that come from yoga philosophy about how to live happy and productive and fulfilling lives, and bring that into my coaching program. I've also recently completed a certification in what's called brain-based leadership. And this is a program that dives really deeply into neuroscience and how the brain works and what happens in our brain when we go through changes in our life. And so we're going to actually talk a little bit about that today in the program. And my focus for my coaching is helping people navigate major life transitions, and I bring these techniques from yoga and psychology into my practice so that we can approach the change from a holistic point of view, a mental, physical, and spiritual point of view to facilitate change. So I'm going to start up by kind of backing up and talking a little bit about wellness. This webinar is on mental wellness, but I wanted to step back and talk about what we mean when we talk about wellness. And so the definition on the screen comes from the Oxford Dictionary, and it's the state of being in good health, especially as an actively pursued goal. So one of the things that I want to kind of point out here is that wellness is not something like, it's not a check the box activity. It's not something that we do like, hey, I graduated from college. I got my MBA. You do it once and you check it off and it's done. Wellness is something that we have to work at. I think of it as a practice in the same way that yoga is a practice. You have to work at it every day of your life. And it is a combination of small habits that you form and that you practice daily that help to keep your physical, mental, and spiritual life in balance. And that's at the end of the day what wellness is really all about. So if we think about this from a physical wellness perspective, some of those habits that I talked about are things like having good nutrition, eating well, making sure that you're exercising regularly, moving the body, sleeping, making sure that you're getting enough rest and relaxation. And then the part of it that we don't like to necessarily talk about publicly is elimination and detoxification. But in order to be physically well, we've got to eliminate toxins from our bodies. So that means pooping well, peeing and pooping well, and making sure that those functions of the body are working the way that they're designed to. So all of these things together, when we do these practices that help to support our physical wellness, it boosts our immune system. It helps our body's immune system to work the way that it was designed, and helps us to prevent disease from forming in the first place, rather than treating disease once it manifests. When we talk about mental wellness, this is about thinking well. It's about what goes on between ears, and it's about our ability to enjoy our life despite what is happening outside of us. That regardless of whether the events that are happening in our environment, in the world around us, are to our liking or not to our liking, whether they meet our expectations or don't meet our expectations, that we're able to find joy in life, that we're able to have a sense of peace and calm, that we're able to be anchored and centered and focused. When you think about mental wellness, there's a pretty wide spectrum from mental wellness to mental illness. It's not like a light switch that we turn off and on. It's a continuum. And at any given point in time, we're all somewhere on the continuum. And so everybody's going to have good days and bad days. There's going to be days when we live our habits really well, and there's going to be days when we slide back. Just like in our physical wellness, we might have a cheat day where maybe we eat some foods that aren't the best foods for us, but we're having a celebration. Or maybe we choose to have a drink, a glass of wine with dinner, or a drink with our dinner. One choice like that doesn't make or break your whole physical wellness. By the same token, we have ups and downs in our mental wellness. And the goal is to maintain good habits over time, so that the balance at the end of the day is fairly level, rather than having really high peaks and low valleys within our mental wellness. So I wanted to talk for a moment about challenges, common challenges that we see that maybe indicate that maybe we could do some work in the area of mental wellness. These items that are listed on screen, I would imagine that if we took a poll of the audience, that I would probably come up with at least a few people who have encountered these challenges in one way or another, either personally or with somebody in their lives, because they're so common throughout our society. And some of these things, anxiety, depression, substance abuse and codependence, eating disorders, they're getting to chronic levels in our society because of the challenges that we face in maintaining our mental wellness. And so part of the practices that we're going to discuss today are to help prevent these conditions from forming. And if you already have them going on in your life, we're going to give you some tools for how to manage them. So I wanted to start with some really practical tips for how do you cultivate mental wellness. And you'll notice that on the list, the first couple of items look remarkably similar to the list that I showed earlier of how you maintain your physical wellness. So getting at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep a night, eating a healthy diet, keeping active. Those things maintain our physical wellness. They're also very important to our mental wellness, because as you can see from the image I've got here on the screen, the health of our body, mind, and spirit are very linked together. It's very difficult to be mentally well if you're not physically well. This is why we see all kinds of support groups for people who go through chronic illness like diabetes or heart disease or cancer or Parkinson's disease or things like that. We oftentimes have to take care of a mental component as well as a physical component, because these things are intricately linked within us. We are full human beings, and we can't completely separate the physical from the mental and the spiritual. The other items on these list are kind of unique to mental wellness. If you think about, we are social beings as human beings. We have a need to interact with one another, and we're also at our core, we are pack animals. We live in tribes. We live in groups. And so our ability to interact in positive ways with one another is very important to our mental health. Also, our ability to help one another, to recognize need in other human beings, and to be able to meet that need, to rise up and help when help is needed, is really important to our mental health, as well as having people that rise up to meet our needs when we're in need. So all of those are very critical to our mental wellness. Also, getting a mental workout, just like we need to physically exercise our body, we need to exercise our minds. So trying new things, trying new skills or new hobbies, doing things that challenge our brain, whether they're you like to do puzzles on your iPhone, or you like to have special projects in your professional life at work that keep you stimulated and challenged. All of these things are really important to maintaining our mental wellness. And then also balancing out the negative effects, just like we have to physically detox and get toxins that build up in our bodies out of the body through elimination. In our mental wellness, we need to get mental toxins out of our system. And so the practices that we have for doing that, we usually refer to as stress management. So there are ways of letting our mind get rid of things that cause us angst, anxiety, anger, any kind of emotional stress, being able to manage those emotions and dissipate them is really critical to maintaining our wellness. And another part that's really critical to that is to have times throughout our day when we practice gratitude, to, regardless of what's going on in our lives, that we're able to find something to be thankful for, to recognize the blessings that we have in our lives and to honor those blessings and to be cognizant of them. And then also to just have time to have fun and laugh. Laughter is one of the greatest mental medicines that there is. It helps to release stress. It releases hormones in the system that lift the mood and counteract depression and anxiety. And so having a good hard belly laugh every day is a great prescription for mental wellness. So those are some key tips. When I think about other things that we can do, those are sort of the little day-to-day habits. These are the big things. The ideas here on the screen here are sort of like life choices that we can make. The first one is to accept what is. Whenever we try to resist reality, this causes suffering in our mental suffering, mental emotional suffering. And so being accepting of the world as it is, of other people as they are, and dealing with the world as it is, as opposed to wishing and railing against it and wanting it to be different, is really critical. I'm a big fan of the Serenity prayer here. If you're not familiar with the Serenity prayer, it's the prayer of Alcoholics Anonymous, but it's a great prayer for everybody that says, God, grant me the serenity to accept what is, the courage to change what I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. So it's very key to and a great prayer about how we maintain our mental balance and our mental well-being. The second item here, being present, is really, really key. A lot of us spend a lot of our lives worrying about what happened in the future and ruminating on on past events, which we can't change, and worrying about what might happen in the future. I always tell my clients that where change can occur is only in the present moment. We can't affect the past. We can't, we have minimal influence over the future. Where we have the ability to influence and impact and actually make change is right now in the present moment. But we have to actually be there in order to do that. We have to be cognizant of what's happening right now. The third thing here is to be able to recognize your stress. A lot of us go through our life and we don't even really realize the stress that we're under. We get used to living at a very high level of stress, and it just becomes normal for us. So being able to recognize what happens to my body when I'm under stress, and noticing those changes before they become chronic, so that you can manage your stress. You can't manage what you can't see. And so being able to recognize in yourself, what are your signs of stress? Does your heart race? Does your breathing become shallow? Do your thoughts in your mind tend to spin or ruminate on things? All of these things are clues that tell us, hey, I'm on overload and it's time to do some stress management. So we need to learn how to recognize what stress looks like in our body and in our life. Fourth thing spoke about before is to have fun. Make sure that you make time in your day, and that you make it a priority in your day every day to do something just for the pure enjoyment of doing it. No goal in mind, no end goal, just to enjoy life. And even if it's just a couple of minutes a day, if you make that time every day in your life to just have fun and enjoy what you're doing, and doing it just for the enjoyment, helps tremendously in creating mental balance in the life. And then the last thing here is serving others. Whenever we can take our focus away from ourselves and our own problems and reach out to others, whether it's just to sit and listen to somebody, give them an ear, to just spend time with them, or to actively do something for somebody else that needs help, whether it's going and getting groceries for an elderly neighbor, or doing participating in a ministry at our church, or helping babysit children for a friend of ours so that they can have some alone time or time with their husband. Any of these things are kind of ways that we can serve others and make time to do that in our lives. It really helps with our mental balance. So I'd like to ask you all quickly to just take a piece of paper, get a piece of paper and a pencil. And I want to do a quick activity here. I want to give you a couple of minutes to just reflect. And I want you to create 3 lists on your piece of paper. Under the first list, I want you to write down, of some of the practices that I just talked about, which ones are you currently using to manage your mental wellness? What things are you currently doing that you would like to continue to do that are good practices? In your second list, I want you to think about some ideas of things that you could start doing that you're not doing today that might help you to manage your mental well-being day to day. So maybe there are some ideas that came up from you for you from the things that you talked about, that I just talked about. And then the last list is, what are things that you are doing today that might be detrimental to your mental wellness that you would like to stop doing? So I'm going to give you just a couple of minutes to jot your list down. And I'm going to ask you if you would like to share in the chat, if you wish to, an item from each of your 3 lists. What do you want to start doing? What do you want to stop doing? And what do you want to continue doing that you're already doing to manage your mental wellness? So if you feel inspired to share in the chat, go ahead and do that. Gina, maybe you can share with us anything that people share in the chat.
Just real quickly, Angela, I would say for me, one of the things that I could start doing that I have found helpful in the past is meditation. I'm not by any means an expert. I know there are different ways. I know it looks differently for different people, but that is something that I'm going to focus on for myself in the future.
That's great. One of the things that in the last couple of months that I have sort of added to my list of things that I'm going to start doing is that I realized that my life had gotten so busy that I had a lot of my friendships had kind of gone by the wayside. And so one of my practices is going to be to start prioritizing and making time just to do things with friends and to cultivate relationships in my life that don't have anything to do with my work or business, but are just people that I enjoy being with.
Mm-hmm. And somebody wrote in and said, one of the good things is sleep. One of the bad things is poor self-talk. And on the to-do list, laugh hard every day.
Awesome. That is very, very good things. The negative self-talk is a great point. That's something that a lot of us get into the habit of doing. We become our own harshest critics. And over time, it really takes a toll on our mental wellness, hearing all of that sort of negative self-talk. And if we can change that talk track in our mind to something much more positive, it has a lot of benefits on just how we feel day to day. All right, I'm going to move on here. I want to share with you just a little bit of brain anatomy. So bear with me, it's a little bit scientific here. But when we talk about mental wellness and particularly about stress, we're going to kind of shift into stress here. There's two parts of the brain that we need to understand a little bit about. The first is called the prefrontal cortex. And the prefrontal cortex is the very front of the frontal lobe of the brain. And this is where all of our higher level thinking takes place. So when you think about things that take a lot of mental effort, they take judgment, they take logic, things like doing math or analysis or things like that. These things happen in the prefrontal cortex, or sometimes you'll hear it called the PFC for short. The prefrontal cortex is where sometimes it's referred to as the human brain, because this is the part of the brain that really separates us from other animals. In human beings, the prefrontal cortex is way more developed than it is in other species of animals. And so this is, in order for the prefrontal cortex to work properly, first off, it requires high amounts of energy to function. And so it takes a lot of our calories from a nutrition perspective, and it uses a lot of energy when it's working. We are consciously thinking when we're working in the prefrontal cortex. We're aware of our thought processes, of our cognitive processes as they're going on. And in terms of physiology in the body, in order for the prefrontal cortex to function properly, everything has to be just right. We have to have the right nutrition in our body. We have to have the right levels of energy and rest and sleep, or else the prefrontal cortex will not function effectively. I've heard this called the Goldilocks of the brain, because everything has to be just right for the prefrontal cortex. The other part of the brain that I want to talk about is the amygdala, and the amygdala is part of the limbic system that is that's pictured on the left here, and the limbic system is what they refer to as our lizard brain. So this is the part of our brain. It's an older part of the brain, and it's very well developed in all animals. It's where our instincts live. It's the part of the brain that's responsible for sensing things, for feeling. Our memories are stored in this part of the brain, and our instincts come from it. So in humans, one of the things we're going to talk about as we move into talking about stress is the fight or flight response. And the fight or flight response originates from this amygdala part of the brain. The amygdala happens, the stuff that happens in our amygdala happens automatically. We don't have to consciously think about these things. We just do them. And so the brain, when we're working out of the amygdala, is kind of on autopilot. It has a low energy requirement. We're not consciously thinking and processing about the things that happen in the amygdala. We're working off of pure instinct. So when we're under stress, the stress in your brain, stress equals threat. Whenever you become stressed out, and it doesn't really matter what it is that's stressing you out, the brain will interpret that as a threat to your survival. And so what happens is the amygdala gets activated, and that instinct to fight or to flee gets activated. And physiologically, what happens is that energy is directed away from the prefrontal cortex, and that energy is then sent to the muscles of the body so that we can either run or fight. And we go into this is our body's autopilot or survival mode, because we perceive stress as a threat to life and limb. If you think about how we were sort of wired as cavemen in the early days of human beings, stress was very closely linked to some kind of threat to our life. And our brains have not evolved beyond that point. So whenever we get stressed out, we get the same reaction that when like a saber-toothed tiger is chasing us as we do when we have a deadline at work that we have to meet. Even though that deadline at work isn't really a threat to our life, our brain doesn't know that. It doesn't know the difference, and it reacts in the same way. Physiologically, our bodies are designed to live with having short bursts of stress where we go into that fight or flight mode. We avoid or conquer whatever the threat is to our life, and then we're followed by long periods of rest and relaxation to set the body back to a normal state. Today, unfortunately, most of us live under chronic stress. And so what happens is the opposite, is that we're living at these very high levels of stress and in that fight or flight mode for long periods of time, and we don't have as long of periods to sort of rest and digest and dissipate those emotions and the hormones in our body that come with them. There's some statistics here on the screen that are actually kind of frightening. The American Institute of Stress reports that a third of all people report feeling extreme stress in their lives. 77% of people report experiencing stress that has effects on their physical health, and 73% affect having stress levels that impact their mental health. So this stress is becoming a chronic condition in our lives. When we live under these high states of stress all of the time, negative impacts affect, it inhibits our ability to regulate mood. When we talk about that negative talk track, it encourages that negative talk track. It creates a negative feedback loop between our emotions and our psychology that perpetuate that negative talk track. Physiologically, it causes inflammation in the body, in our organs and in our body systems. And inflammation is the precursor for many chronic diseases. It can lead to behavioral and disturbances in our quality of life. It can impact our ability to sleep well, and that impacts both our physical and our mental well-being. And chronic cardiovascular disease is linked to all of these things. So when we see the rises that we've seen in cardiovascular disease across the American population, it's very, very linked to this chronic stress that we're all living under. So what do we do? How do we counteract it? There's some very simple things here that we're going to talk about that you can do to counteract this stress in our lives. The first is that the amygdala gets activated as soon as we're under stress. The way to stop the amygdala and shift our thinking into prefrontal cortex, you have to pause, act, don't react. Before you just have a reaction to something, take a breath, count to 10, and make a conscious decision about how you're going to act, as opposed to just letting the instinctual system drive your reaction to what's occurring. The other thing is to introspect a bit on what you're feeling. Feel your feelings. When we try to suppress our feelings, it makes them that much stronger. So we need to feel what it is we're feeling and actually put a name on it. So, and when I talk about naming it or labeling the emotion, it's very easy people to say, I feel stressed. But what is it that you actually feel? Do you feel fear? And if you feel fear, what is it that you're fearing? What is it that you're afraid of? Or maybe you're angry. Maybe something that somebody said or did angered you. Or maybe something caused you to feel left out, isolated, alone. There's a whole range of feelings, and we tend to group them under large categories, drill down and name them. And then the last thing here, and Gina's going to get into this in even more detail, is about reappraising or reframing what's going on. Is there another way that you can look at what has happened, and another way that you can respond to what has gone on? I will give this to you as this last activity as a homework assignment at the end. I'm going to turn it over to Gina at this point and let her carry on from here. There's a note here on the screen that if you are interested in transition coaching, if you'd like to learn more about what I do at Paranama Coaching, you can reach me at paranamacoaching@gmail.com. I offer a free 30-minute exploratory session if you want to kind of sit down and talk and find out if coaching is right for you. And so if you would like to contact me, this is the way to get a hold of me. So I'm going to turn it over to Gina now. And I'm going to make you the host, Gina.
Thank you, Angela. That's such a great segue into what I'm going to talk about, which is reframing the way we think about our lives and about our situations. Okay, here we go. Let me share and all right, here are my slides. Boost your mental wellness. I'm going to pick up where Angela left off. We're going to talk about the way you think and how to reframe things in your life. My name, as I mentioned, is Gina Covarrubias, and I am an engineering life coach. Here is my outline for today, and the big takeaway is you're going to learn how to practice self-awareness to increase your mental health. And after a short intro and explaining a little bit about what life coaching is, the meat of what I'm going to talk about today is in sections 3 and 4, and I will wrap everything up with a conclusion. And I love this picture because this is like nutrition for your brain, and this is exactly what you're getting today. So about me, why am I here? Who am I? I'm an engineer by education. I practiced for about 15 years. I worked in corporate and academia and government. And I'm currently a life coach with my own business, Deliberate Doing. And I'm here because about 10 years ago, my health took a deep dive. I was going through a really tough time at work, and there was a lot of career stress that was building and building and building over time, and I didn't do anything about it, and it kind of it left me out of work for 1.5 years, and I was really ill, and it was just a big mess. So once I recovered and got back to work, I thought about who I am, what am I supposed to be doing, and I reevaluated my strengths and my weaknesses and what it is I should be doing with my life. And that led me to life coaching, which led me to creating Deliberate Doing. And so what I do now, what my mission is to help other professionals avoid the same fate that I had. I help professionals who feel stuck in their careers. They don't know what to do next in their careers. They hate what they're doing, and they just can't make a decision about how to get out of it. That's my mission. So let's talk a little bit about what life coaching actually is. It's a cognitive behavioral technique. And if you know anything about cognitive behavioral therapy, what it teaches is that your thoughts create your feelings, and then you act on those feelings. So the premise behind life coaching is that your thoughts, what you're thinking up here, propagate your resulting behaviors or actions. There are two ways that all of us experience the world around us. One is through sensations, starts in the body and travels up to the brain. And what life coaching focuses on are the perceptions. Perceptions are the ways in which our brain interprets all of the externals, the world around us. And our brain interprets the world in the form of thoughts and beliefs, or I also call them interpretations. So as a life coach, what I do is I help you understand your perceptions of the world around you. And I teach you how to think critically such that you can solve your emotional problems for yourself. Section 3, we're going to talk about something I call your life curriculum, and you can ignore the slide for a moment. Imagine yourself sitting in school. It's the first day of class. Teacher or the professor hands you a curriculum for the semester. It lays out all the things you're going to learn and talk about. What I want you to imagine is your life, okay? Your life has a curriculum, and all of our curriculums look different, and life is going to hand you your own curriculum. And in that curriculum includes some of these things here on the table that I've listed. So the people in your life are part of your curriculum. The words people say, the things people do, the news, COVID, social issues, your past, all of these things are part of your life curriculum. The situations and the externals around you are challenging because what our brain's job is to interpret all this curriculum around you. And that's where we sometimes really get ourselves stuck, and we get hung up in these thoughts and beliefs that we're feeding our brains. Interpreting your life curriculum can get really tricky because, number one, we get comfortable when everything goes as planned and when there's very little obstacles in our lives and everything seems good. We like that and we get really comfortable with that. And it's almost as if we feel entitled to that. And number two, it's also tricky because what we do is we tell ourselves that things have gone wrong when life isn't so easy. For example, COVID shouldn't be happening, or this president shouldn't have been elected, or whatever the case. We feed ourselves these negative narratives and we tell ourselves things have gone wrong, it shouldn't be this way. And what I want you to understand is that obstacles are part of our human experience. We need obstacles. We need to fail and get up and try again. There is no good in the world without the bad. Obstacles are here to force us to evolve. That's our purpose as humans. We need to evolve and grow, and we can't do that unless we're challenged. And we are not, as humans, entitled to 100% happiness. Somewhere along the way, some people got this idea in their minds that we're supposed to be happy all the time, and we're not. That's not what life is about. Your life is fair game. So when you think about your curriculum that's been dealt to you, I want you to remember that as a human on this earth, you are open to all the good and all the bad that could happen. As a life coach, what I do is I help you manage your mental capacity for all possibilities in life. So I teach self-awareness. And speaking of self-awareness, this is a great tool that I want you to apply to your life. And you might have to watch this a few times over because it's probably new for most of you. Beliefs and perceptions create your reality via a steer emotional framework. And this is how the framework works. Situations or externals out there in the world, okay, make our brains think. They make our gears turn. That's when our brains start interpreting the world around us. Those thoughts create feelings inside of our body. And what happens is we take action from those feelings. We act from that energy that's being generated inside of our bodies. And when you take all of your actions and put them together, it creates your reality. So the big takeaway from this page is that your thoughts propagate your reality. Your belief systems, your interpretations, your perceptions create your reality. I'm going to go over 2 examples and show you how this works. Here's a situation listed at the top. You work for an employer and they request that you work overtime. Okay, so you could interpret that many different ways. You could have so many different thoughts about that. In this case, and in this example, you think to yourself, I better comply. They may lay me off if I don't do it. And how does that make you feel? It makes you feel probably obligated, probably a little anxious, maybe a little panicky. And then how do you act based on this energy? Well, you give attention to your job instead of to your family. You lose your sleep. You might complain to some of your friends and family about it. You might blame your employer. They're making me work overtime. You might ruminate about looking for other jobs because you want to get away from the situation. And when you take all of these actions and you put them together, and remember, these actions are a result of this energy you're feeling inside. This energy is a result of what you're thinking. When you take all these actions and put them together, what does that give you? You're laying yourself off from your own life. You're so concerned about being laid off from your employer that you sacrifice your own life in the process. So the big takeaway here is that the feeling, the energy of obligation and anxiety, they don't come from the fact that your employer requested that you work overtime. They come from the fact that you're telling yourself, I better comply, I better do it, I might be laid off. Here is another example, same situation. Your boss requests overtime and you have a different thought about it this time. And you tell yourself, you know what, whether or not I work overtime, it's my decision, I own it. They can't make me, nobody else can make me. This is my decision to make. How is that going to make you feel? What kind of energy is that going to generate inside of you? An authoritative energy, a coherent energy. You are in command of your own decision here. So what do you do based on this energy? Well, you're going to discuss it with your spouse or your partner. You're going to consider how it fits into your self-care routine because you care about yourself and your health and your well-being. You may ask yourself, will the results be to my benefit? If they are, do I still want to do it? And you're confidently going to make a decision, yes or no, I will do it or I won't. And you're going to back yourself up. And as a result of these actions that you're taking, from this energy of authoritative and coherency over your life, the reality is that you get to be authentic and you are not going to apologize for it. So the really good news, another great takeaway here that I want you to remember is that you get to choose your thoughts and your beliefs and your interpretations. Okay, that's really important to know. What goes on up here, you get to choose. And the big arrow here on the left, the gray arrow, is showing you that your reality is a direct result from your belief systems. So that's why it's so important to understand what it is you're believing up here. So how do you want to steer your life? If you want to practice self-awareness, I've got 3 simple steps here. Recognize your interpretations. What is it that you're believing about the external world? What is it you're actually believing about yourself? It's easier said than done. That's part of my job as a life coach. Number 2, become familiar with this steer emotional framework. Try to apply it to your life. If you find that you're feeling really anxious or frustrated or something very negative, try plugging it into the emotional framework on paper and fill in the rest of the blanks and see what you get. Number 3, the other thing I do is to help people change their interpretations and to help them change their beliefs accordingly. Now, I'm not saying this is easy. You're not going to go from, I'm just going to use this example. You're not going to go from, I don't think I'm good enough and other people are smarter than me. You're not going to go from that to, I'm really smart and I know I can do it. Okay, there's a big gap there in between. And so what I do is I help people slowly tweak their beliefs about themselves or about the world so that eventually they can get to the place where they can have thoughts that are self-serving. And a couple of brain exercises here at the bottom. You can take these away and think about them on your own time when you have a few minutes. Think about how you can be an example to other people of what's possible in life. When you find yourself getting down, ask yourself, how is this happening for me, not to me? And the last one, how can you be present with what is? And like Angela mentioned, great point, stop resisting the way things are. To summarize, what I've taught you today is that your brain's job is to interpret your life curriculum that has been handed to you, which is different from everybody else's curriculum. I've also taught you that externals and situations and circumstances out there beyond your control don't cause your emotions. Your perceptions do. Your interpretations and your belief systems cause your emotions for you. And I taught you the STEER emotional framework. If you can get in the habit of using this and being aware of what you're thinking and being aware of how your thoughts are creating your feelings, then you can create a deliberate and purposeful life for yourself instead of going through the motions and living on standby, because that's not fun. Nobody wants to do that. The big conclusion here is that you suffer unnecessarily when you resist what is, and your work, all of our work in the world, is to reconcile what is versus what our expectations are. This is really important. In one column, you have a vision for your life, and you have a vision of how things should be and what your ideal life looks like. And in another column, we have what is. We have reality. And so all of our work is to bridge the gap between the two. How are we going to reconcile what we want versus what is? I would love to hear from you if you have specific questions or if you are interested in some free coaching. My email is gina@deliberatedoing.com. Please do not hesitate to send me any questions or comments about this session. I also have videos and a career blog on my website, which is deliberatedoing.com. And I would also love to connect with all of you on LinkedIn if we're not already connected. And I leave you with this quote at the bottom: the more you live in fear, the less you live in life.